What's up guys, Sub-Zeric here with something really special. This is a game from the TOC Summit Invitational. If you guys are familiar with League, this is basically the MSI of TFT. They have players from all around the world competing against each other in a pretty quick tourney. I'm pretty sure it's only 3 days long. There's a lot of Chinese players in this, and then you can see in this lobby we got Rereplay, Tamara, YBY at 1, and I think Canbiz is the last one. Yeah, from the entire world basically to play against these Chinese players. It's such a fun tourney to watch every time they do it. It's usually like once a set around now towards like the middle of the set, and it's always a treat to watch the best players from all these regions compete against each other. Just gives us more fuel for the people who want to say, oh, NA's the best, oh, this other region's the best. The other thing that is pretty interesting about this lobby is that we are a Wandering Sentinels lobby, so Replay already has a kind of weird setup. The Reaper, the Altruist, and then the Porcelain don't really fit very well together, so it's going to be interesting to see how he puts these all together. And then there's one more really interesting thing about this game. You'll see once he rerolls his augments here, Fine Vintage is the augment that Replay decides to take in this spot. Fine Vintage, an augment that was so broken early on in the set. They've nerfed it, and it still has just managed to be strong throughout the set. So Replay is going to take it in this spot. It makes a lot of sense, right? You can potentially make a really strong Yone later, a really strong just entire board with Altruist buffing up everyone else. So, you know, the types of units and traits that you want to play towards with Altruist make a lot of sense with Fine Vintage. And it's also just a pretty strong augment in general if you can get there. So we're going to build our first item, throw it onto bench. If you guys aren't familiar with Fine Vintage, we got to wait 4 rounds before this item will transform into a support anvil. We got the Yone already, which is very nice. He's going to allow us to actually play around Reaper pretty well. And right now, Replay is just trying to figure out how am I going to make gold? Because you have to make gold here. Selling the Yorick makes perfect sense. And then probably just selling one of the Rek'Sais. Hold on to these Kha'Zix is here, because Kha'Zix will probably be our next in. That'll be 3 Reaper plus Heavenly, and then we can start even looking towards maybe 4 Reaper, which is a trait that was buffed. It's not amazing, but not terrible. We pick up a second Yone here, which is actually really nice. Maybe we can find an early Yone too, and I mean, it's not going to break the bank to hold on to this Yone, so completely fine to hold on to it for now. And yeah, I mean, Replay already putting his board in. He's thinking about Heavenly plus 4 Reaper, and so it's going to be like a Reaper Heavenly board, very similar to kind of just like standard Heavenly, except we're playing 4 Reaper. It's bringing me back to like the start of the set when people actually used to play around 4 Reaper. Who even plays that nowadays? But they did buff it, so maybe it'll be solid here. We get a encounter carousel, and this is duplicator. This is fantastic for us because this would allow us to just make our Yone 2 right on the spot. There's also a Kindred on carousel as far as what we want. We could also take a Loon for 1 more gold, but the Kindred is the 4th Reaper that we need. So yeah, I think picking up the Kindred here makes perfect sense. This allows us to play that 4 Reaper setup, and yeah, he's looking at maybe Morgana, kind of just going back to like a 4 Reaper Kayn setup that has existed, you know, sort of early on in the set. Like I said, yep, here's the level up. He's going to probably use the duplicator here. You could scout around to make sure that you even need to duplicator here, but you probably do. And then I fully expect him to just make this BT and just throw it onto bench here. And ooh, he's gonna make the BT on the Yone here. I mean, I could certainly see it. This means that he's not gonna be able to find vintage this item, so it's gonna be a while before we actually get another support anvil. But yeah, he ends up actually even losing this fight, so it feels actually pretty bad. But when you play Fine Vintage, you do actually want at some point to make items. It's just usually late game that you end up making these items. We open this here. Randuin's, I think, yeah, makes a lot of sense in a spot like this. Works pretty well with the Umbral that we can play. Also just a pretty good item in general. The other option would be something like Zeke's. But yeah, I think Randuin's is fine. You could even take just like Banshees there. Wouldn't be too bad just to guarantee it, because we know we're going to be playing a melee carry. But he prefers the Randuin's here. It's going to synergize really well with the Umbral Shield and makes a lot of sense. I mean, it kind of... You can take as many Randuins as you want, but you can only take 1 Banshees, so taking the Randuins first actually makes a decent amount of sense, I would say, here. But yeah, we did not manage to win streak even with the BT slam, which is so sad, because I think that was the idea behind the slam for sure. It's play for tempo, try to win that fight. But Fine Vintage is really hard to play for tempo in general. Getting those 2 components, kind of good in that we got more items to play around with Fine Vintage, kind of bad in that we, you know, didn't... Oh my god, 5 items here is fantastic for us. But yeah, kind of bad in that we don't really get to tailor our items whatsoever. But hey, 5 items here. This is going to mean we're going to have a ton of items to find vintage this game. That's actually like huge for us here. And, you know, it's very solid with the fact that we, once again, we got those 2 items from Anvil earlier on. Looking like Rereplay might even... Yeah, he's... Ooh, wow. Yeah, he's just gonna make all of his items here. He's gonna make Titans, Sterax, and BT and throw them onto Yone. This is a really interesting way of playing Fine Vintage that I think a lot of people don't consider is he's actually just made all of his items here, and then he's gonna Fine Vintage this Archangels, and this is gonna be his setup. This is really, really cool. I mean, Band of Thieves turns into a support item, so I would probably just grab this here. I would take a support item for a silver augment essentially here. You could also take Teaming Up, which would do something similar but give you a little bit extra gold, but I would certainly pay that 6 gold for an extra component so that after Carousel here we get another support item. So yeah, look at all this. Look at all these items that we have, right? We have a 3-item Yone, and we're gonna have 3 support items, 4 support items after we get item off Carousel here. Oh my god, he actually slams the TG onto the Kindred here. We're playing Fine Vintage with no Fine Vintage, just super, super tempo style. This is so wild, actually. I mean, so far, I could get it. I mean, maybe the idea, well, we'll see what he ends up doing. You could always, ooh, that's a Lee Sin. I'm not sure exactly how we end up actually playing this Lee Sin. Maybe we get into more Duelist later. I mean, Lee Sin's a fantastic unit, but I mean, he doesn't really make very good usage of the Reaper +1 or the Ultras +1's just hard to play in general. But yeah, I mean, Lee Sin is such a broken unit that you could certainly consider playing around him. But yeah, maybe the idea is we throw this TG onto Kindred for a few rounds and then maybe move it, like Fine Vintage it later. I don't really think that makes any sense because like the early game is going to be the easiest time for you to waste those rounds and stack up. But either way, really, really interesting stuff from Rereplay. It's not something that I've ever really seen as Fine Vintage with all of these items slammed in this spot. So many people just sack the early game and then spike later, but Replay doing something pretty interesting here. He's going to pick up the Annie, just the highest cost unit, so easy to pick up. Nice thing about Fine Vintage is you don't really care about your components, especially after you've already built all these items. And boom, there's a Kayn and a Lee Sin. So now we can really start considering some stuff. We're going to pick up the Kayn here, put him onto our board because he's just better than the Kindred. And yeah, he's just going to move the TG over to Kayn. Going to make the TG here onto Annie and just throw that onto bench so that we can turn that into a Fine Vintage item. But yeah, I mean, it looks like he is just angling towards this Heavenly Reaper setup. These items are going to stay on Yone for a while, maybe even find a Yone 3? I don't know. I mean, Yone 3, not a very good guy. Like, they're buffing him next patch. Yone, one of the weakest 3-star 3 costs, but I mean, maybe, if there were a spot for it, maybe this is it. Another one here, I would look at Virtue of the Martyr here. Yeah, I think Virtue of the Martyr is a pretty solid item. One of the better support items, synergizes pretty well with the Randuins that we're going to get all this Armor Namar, and this is going to be healing on top of that. The other option would be like a Zephyr, and then you could Zephyr opposite side to make Yone wrap, but I mean, he kind of already, not really wraps, but he kind of already has backline access in his ability just by dashing, so yeah, I don't think you need that. You just want to have the most tanky Yone that you can possibly have here, and with the Titans, with the Sterax, with the BT, and with the Fine Vintage value, this Yone is just a monster. This is such a cool setup. I've never really seen somebody do this where they take Fine Vintage, just slam items, but with all the extra components that we got this game, we're still getting decent value out of Fine Vintage. We have the Randuins, we have the Virtue of the Martyr here, but the triple item Yone is going to make such good usage out of these stats. Here's another 2-3 components, so that's another Fine Vintage item here. We get Soraka, who of course fits so well onto this board as an Ultrist and a Heavenly unit, and yeah, our board looks fantastic. We could maybe even consider like a fast 9 from this position. You just level up here. Ideally, I think you would be putting in another Heavenly unit in this spot. I guess Ghostly is the other consideration with something like a Morgana, but I mean, I feel like you should play for 5 Heavenly here. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what we end up playing towards here because we don't have that Nico, which is the unit that we would want to get in here. I mean, maybe we high roll something. You could throw even a randomly Sin onto the board, would not be terrible here. Last Augment, we're silver, so, and it's going to be silver prismatic. Okay. And I like Harm Assist a lot in setups like these. Yeah, I mean, Reaper +1 doesn't really do anything. Overwhelming Force is a ton of items, yeah, and we do just pick that up because that's going to be 3 more support items, basically. Yeah, so, I mean, I think this makes perfect sense. He could, I would be surprised, but maybe he's going to consider not Fine Vintaging some of these other items. I feel like at this point, you just want to Fine Vintage everything, but we'll see. And he does end up picking up the Nico, and so he can play that on this board. And yeah, he's just Fine Vintaging everything here, which I like a lot. And yeah, like I said, I think this board, you don't really have to roll that much this stage. You can potentially just push levels. He's also holding all these Duelists, which is pretty interesting. I think he's considering a pivot into Fine Vintage Duelists just because of how strong that comp is. Itemize here, your options. If you want to play into Duelist, Locket is strong. Obsidian Cleaver, yeah, so another really nice option here to get Shred for our board because we just don't have that here. So I like it a decent bit. I mean, I think if we know that we're playing Duelist this game, I would probably just take the Locket, but I think maybe he's in between a couple comps. I guess the other thing is also that Randuin's Locket is pretty awkward positioning wise. You want to sort of clump in a circle once you have Randuin's, and you can't really do that with Locket. So yeah, I mean, we just have to wait a few more rounds for these items to actually evolve into the other ones. You probably just take highest cost here unless there's a unit that you really care about. Belt actually, I like a decent bit because this could also be a Morello's potentially, because we don't actually have Heal Cut on this board yet, right? And there also is a Volibear too, which is pretty fun. Pick a Morgana here, and we're actually going to start rolling here. I could certainly see this. Yeah, you don't really need to play the Nico at this point. The Zyricon fantastic in here for another Altruist unit. We don't have Dragon Lord in because we're not playing around Lee Sin yet, but maybe that's something that we can figure out in the future. I mean, it's a really interesting setup for Rereplay. Thinking about still the pivot back into Duelist. I think the second he finds a Lee Sin too, he's just going to say, I'm going to pivot into Duelist. So really smart as well for him to say, this Duelist setup is so strong, and Yone is so weak as a 3-star unit, that I can consider just pivoting into Duelist here. The units that I'm holding make a lot of sense already for a Duelist setup. But, you know, alternatively, if we find something like a Kane too, we can play around that. And, I mean, hey, you pick up Irelia here. This makes you really want to play towards Duelist as well. You pick up a Moonstone here. A bunch of Yones on the roll down, but probably not going to end up being held here. And yeah, we're just gonna fit the Irelia onto the board now, throw a Moonstone onto our backline, probably the Soraka. Kind of awkward. If we were going to play Duelists, then I feel like you would have definitely taken the Locket, because you don't really need the Armor Shred from the Obsidian Cleaver, because you know that you're playing this setup. Wow, really flex stuff from a replay here. We're gonna take another Randuin's here, and then I guess either a Banshees or another. I think at this point Banshee's a pretty good pickup. Yeah, I like this a lot. And then I guess another Virtue of the Martyr here, Eternal Flame. Okay, yeah, Eternal Flame, guarantee the heal cut. Means that we're probably not going to go for a Morello from this item here. And yep, the second he finds a Lee Sin, he's going to pivot this board. 6 Duelist in here. He's also still playing this Kha'Zix, which we can definitely get out of at this point. He really just has to get this pivot done, make sure that all of his support items are on the right units. Yeah, and yeah, Kha'Zix is going to stay on the board for a sec. PG is going to move over to Kiana, actually. And I assume you just find Vintage here, right? I mean, the problem is it's so long. That's kind of why I liked more not taking, just going for heal cut item here, going for like a Morello, though. I don't think he actually had the option for Morello. Let's actually go back and see if he would have had the option. I mean, yeah, he would have had option for Morello, and he's red buff open as another option. So yeah, I kind of like that a little bit better, going for Morello instead of Eternal Flame. And then, because now, like, if you make something, you have to wait forever. It looks like maybe he's looking at, like, a Redemption Slam, something like that. I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll see. But what a journey that Replay's taken us on this game. And, I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? Thin and Puddles, this is actually great for us if we get some more components. I mean, imagine if we get the triple component cash out here from TK here. That would be so nice. Okay, probably not happening at this point. We do have odd components, so you definitely want to be standing in the puddles, because even just one component here would be a ton for us. Looks like it was just 4 gold from the orb that opened for someone else, unless there's more along with that. So actually a little unfortunate for us. We definitely would have preferred the components here, but still not bad. And yeah, at this point we're gonna get out of the guy. We're going to Randuin's Soraka. I actually don't really love how this is like where we're putting items. I would much rather have items on the Soraka than on the Tristana, because Tristana has a decent chance of jumping forward and dying, and the Moonstone and Eternal Flame dying is pretty bad. Looks like she was last to live this fight, so it's fine. But yeah, I mean, at this point, sack 2 more, we can go level 9 and feel really good about our spot. I mean, we're very healthy in this spot. Ideally, we can get like a Rivet onto this board, play for 4 Ultras, which is a disgusting amount of Armor and MR to the entire board, especially with this healing that we have from Virtue of the Martyr. We already have a lot of Armor and MR from Randuin's, though, so it's a little bit repetitive, but I mean, still, I mean, you play 4 Ultras here, I'm sure. We're thinking about even sending the bow onto Soraka, just gonna opt to not do it. We do have an encounter coming up at the end of this stage. Imagine that's like Cho'Gath encounter or something. You have 3 components, you definitely want to keep this component potentially, but I mean, you do also have the remover, so it's not the end of the world if you do that. Item-wise here, just looking for Irelia items for sure. Best case scenario, get stuff like Renans. I'm not seeing anything that's very nice here, so we're gonna be forced to take Declaw and throw it onto the Volibear, which is, yeah, I mean, I would have loved it just like anything for this Irelia here, but hey, I mean, Declaw Volibear is not the end of the world. We do end up picking up a Wukong here. That can be our in this spot as well. Fits really well for the Sage and Heavenly. And he is also going to get the Diana in over the Soraka, drop out of 3 Ultras so that we can get Sage and Dragonlord onto this board. Makes perfect sense. Sage is so big for Lee Sin. It's one of the most important synergies that you can get. even Heavenly plus an extra Altruist is not worth not playing Sage here, and Replay, yeah, is just going to play Sage. The healing onto this Lee Sin is just insane, especially with all the armor to Mar. Just look how unkillable this guy is. He's just an absolute monster. Still also holding on to the Yasuo Replay. Really, I love the units that he's held on bench this game. He's been really sort of like dedicated to holding on to units and not like selling his options. He held on to those Yones for so long. He held on to those Canes for so long. If he had hit a Kane 2 or hit like a Yone 3, he could have played towards that. And similarly, he's holding on to this Yasuo on bench because, hey, if I find a Duelist spat off Carousel, I can play for 8 Duelists, and that actually gives me a really good chance of actually winning out this lobby, though I think this might be his breaking point. I think he's looking at making 10 gold here and selling this Lee Sin. I mean, or not the Lee Sin, but the Yasuo, but still he doesn't sell it. I mean, if anything, I would sell the Lee Sin here, but he doesn't actually want to. I don't think he would have been able to make gold there because he wants to hold everything that he has here on this bench. But yeah, I love this. I think I've seen more of this as the set has gone on. People are realizing that the set is actually pretty good. There's a decent, there are a lot of lines that you can actually play. Even this patch that's a little bit more narrow, there's so much stuff that you can do. I have to imagine this is Deathblade for Irelia. I don't really see anything else that's very takeable here. I guess if you're really afraid of not having heal cut, you could take the red buff, but I think you just have to trust in the Eternal Flame. Fantastic roll done on 9 here. Pick up Rakan 2, pick up even the Tristana 2 is pretty good, and he's thinking about moving TG somewhere. Not sure where. I guess the idea is move it over to Rakan, and then just put the Randuins on somebody else. I like that a lot, actually. And he has the double TG, so he can do that. He did... If he wanted to do that, he's wasted a remover because he could have just moved the TG last round, but I think he just ran out of time. Could have popped off the Randuins. But I mean, hey, who needs 2 TGs at this point? Also, he's looking at playing Yasuo over the Darius here because this allows him to make 10 gold. This is pretty cute. I also think Yasuo is just, in my opinion, a slightly better unit than Darius on boards like this. He is extra tankiness, which is really what your board needs more than extra armor and MR. And we are still just going to keep the TG on the Kiana. I think he's maybe even doing it dynamically based on the items because these items don't really do much onto Rakan. But I think maybe the second he finds an AP item, he's going to move it over to Rakan. We'll see. Another good win here, though. 48 HP with that extra HP from the Ari Kiss. So we are very healthy here. And yeah, at this point, the Steadfast plus QSS, he's even going to move it over to Wukong. Yeah, he's going to say, I care about Wukong items more than Rakan. We are fighting 10 Mythic here, which is not very fun. This player got Mythic from their Wandering Trainer, and +1 Mythic is enough to hit 10 Mythic on 9. This is one of the most insane combinations that you can get because it's so easy. You just have to be level 9, and you just have to have Mythic +1, which is just so unreasonable, I think is a reasonable thing to say, actually, about this setup. Gunblade here for Irelia is probably our best option here. Fantastic to heal up the rest of the team. But yeah, I mean, certainly looks like we cannot beat this guy, so we just have to play for a top 2, and hopefully we can beat this other guy. I guess he's holding on to the Lee Sin. There is maybe a world where if we hit Lee Sin 3 that we can potentially beat him, but I don't know if I even believe in that world. I believe in Lee Sin 3 beating that board, but I don't believe in is us hitting Lee Sin here with 30 gold. We have to win this fight, live 2 rounds, then roll down at 7-1. I feel like that's the only way. We do win this fight, eliminate this guy, 30 gold here. We'd also have to like natural Lee Sin pretty soon. But yeah, I think this is the game plan. Oh, never mind. The game plan's not Lee Sin 3. Okay, I don't know what the game plan is then, because I'm pretty sure we're always losing this. So yeah, I think we're simply dead here. I mean, it was pretty impossible to hit the Lee Sin. I would have liked to see us at least try for it, but yeah, seems pretty impossible to hit the Lee Sin there. I think Rereplay is going to content himself with the top 2 here and say that, yeah, there's no way. And like, you'd have like 60 gold at, more like 70 gold to find a Lee Sin 3. So you would need 5 more copies. I mean, that's already 20 gold. So he would have to find 5 Lee Sins in 20 rolls, something like that. I mean, it's not impossible. I mean, I think it's his best bet, but looks like Replay is just trying to potentially go 10 here and cap out his board, but I still don't think the level 10 even does enough here. He's going 10, trying to pick up a Janna for 4 Dragon Lord. I mean, you can hold on to the Aurelia, but you're not even going to be able to make it, so honestly, you probably don't buy this because this is the last fight. Yep, I agree, and we end up just getting a Malphite on the board instead. A little sad, but yeah, I mean, a top 2 is a top 2, I guess, and you'll absolutely take those. I didn't actually mention at the start of the video, but Replay was the first place overall in his group. He absolutely stomped his group because of, I mean, he had a lot of really fortunate games. He had a storied champion game, but I thought this was actually a really interesting fine vintage game with all the item slams early, the way that we transitioned into the Duelist board were really, really cool. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. Check my Twitch and all my other links down below. Thanks for watching.